Hey, hello there. Welcome to Talking with Tony. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome back to the show today the Talking with Tony, lead football college expert, although you wouldn't know about his picks this year, but he's on the comeback trail, and this is going to be a big week for him. Mr. Danny Arp on the ground in Jacksonville, Florida. How are you today, Danny?
I'm doing just great. Similar to Georgia and our curse against Bama. They lost early. I lost early on some picks. Had a horrible week. It just totally demolished me. But I'm coming back just like Georgia. So
Well,
I feel good.
I noticed Scott Van Pelt of ESPN. I'm always bringing up Saban and Scott Van Pelt, experts.
Yeah.
Scott Van Pelt won one game this past week after he had gotten to within one game of 500. So he's back in trouble, again. He may have only picked 7 or 8, but I have rebounded a little bit. I'm 24-20 overall, but I'm still not happy with that. We're set to give the people some winners. We're obviously going to be talking Georgia and Florida. There's another big game, Danny, and I love to reminisce here on Talking with Tony. When we were kids, January 1st, 1983, in the Cotton Bowl, SMU was going for their first undefeated season since the 40s. It may have been 1948. And they had to play Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was Dan Marino, number 6 in the country. And Pittsburgh, no better team the last 5 years with a cumulative record than Pittsburgh. Fazio and Jackie Sherrill just had done a tremendous job with the Pitt Panthers. And they played in one of those iconic bowl games in Dallas, rainy, sleet, a little bit of snow. Jake's going to get us some footage. 83 Cotton Bowl, Jake. It's second half will be good to look at. I remember it raining and sleeting some there in the second half, but it was a home crowd for SMU, and they pulled off the victory by intercepting Dan Marino in the end zone in the final minute of the game, 7-3. Now, this is an SMU team that featured Eric Dickerson and Craig James and McElhaney, the quarterback, and they got hit with a death penalty not far after that for some of the things that they were going on. But for that glorious day, they completed an undefeated season. They tied Arkansas 17-17 was their only blemish, and they finished number 2 in the polls. And that interception, I think, was done by Blaine Smith. The late Wes Hopkins tipped the ball, and he played for years for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think a guy named Blaine Smith caught it in the corner of the end zone. So SMU would have its troubles, Danny, soon after that. But for that period of time, the Cotton Bowl was a big deal back then if you played in the Cotton Bowl.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it. And you brought that up last time, right? You're 1 year later talking about the Cotton Bowl with the big Georgia-Texas matchup we had. But the 1983 season is the year you were talking about last time that Auburn had such a good season, right?
Yeah, and that was the 82 season that we were just
you're on 82, 83, the bowl game, right? That's what I'm saying. So we're talking 1 year apart. That's why I had to sort of rack in my brain there that I was getting it mixed up. But SMU was definitely, the Mustangs were on it. And I think the year before that was the year Marino beat us, I believe, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Broke our hearts.
John Brown was the receiver that made the catch in the end zone there late that beat Georgia, and John Brown was hurt and did not get to play in that Cotton Bowl, Pittsburgh versus SMU, but he was probably Marino's favorite target. And one thing I love about that Cotton Bowl game is, I think Pitt's home uniforms are classic, and they will wear them a good bit still, or either a variation of it.
Yeah.
They had to wear the away uniforms. SMU is the Southwest Conference champion back then. Southwest Conference, we don't even have a Southwest Conference anymore, but back then they were the designated home team for the Cotton Bowl, so they wore the home jerseys. And I think people think about that game and they think about it was just a little bit over freezing temperatures, but when Joe Montana and Notre Dame faced off against Houston in the Cotton Bowl, and it was not for the national championship, but it was a heck of a game and a heck of a comeback. That's the so-called chicken soup game. People can look that up. That's around 79 or 78. That he threw a touchdown pass to Chris Haynes, KRIS, at the end of the game. The huge comeback win over Houston. But that game was like freezing and windy and just absolutely miserable to be at. This one was not great because of the sleet and the rain, but it wasn't as cold as conditions as that Notre Dame Houston game.
Look, I'll tell you, Worst the place to be. Well, maybe there's a lot worse places, but if you're talking about football, is on a cold field when it's freezing. There's nothing worse. Man, I hated that when I played football. When it would get cold, it was just the worst time. Everybody hated the beginning of the year because it's so hot. I enjoyed that.
Like the year you guys were murdered down in Worth County, it was freezing.
Oh, yeah, that was freezing. That was like 10 degrees. But
and every 5 minutes, they were shooting the cannon because they were scoring.
I know. I don't see how those people take it. But, yeah, those old classic games out there, those Texas, I didn't think it'd take anybody to get that long to get back to prominence as it did Georgia from that 1980 to, outlive the 1980. But Pitt and SMU are trying to do it this year, I guess.
They are both having amazing seasons, and it's kind of like unconventional. But since we've talked about that, and we've talked about it at nauseum with my loving to go down memory lane, I'll get you to pick that one right off the bat here. Pittsburgh at SMU. SMU favored by 7.5. Who do you like?
Well, first year for SMU, right? ACC, that's odd. I mean, it's one of those comedies. Oh, Atlantic Coast, so everybody's on the coast. Nah, not some of the teams aren't. But
I hate it, by the way. But
it's terrible, man.
Me, yeah.
Okay, you know what though? It's awful. But it's made some good matchups this year. I mean, there's been some good football games, man. I mean, we got some today because of this new conference alignment that we would have never made, and not until bowl season, right? I mean, and it means something. These games mean something now. So Pitt coming in, kicking butt, 7-0. SMU's having a great season, 7-1, right?
That classic ACC matchup, ladies and gentlemen.
It is. It's just awesome. But I feel like both of those teams are turnover machines, especially in their last game. They both SMU was really giving it away to Duke, but they came back and pulled it off. And I would say I'm going with SMU to not have the turnover fest. I think they'll be able to cover the 7.5. I'm going SMU minus 7.5.
Okay, the only pick that I'll do this for, the four panel members are split in this game. Danny likes SMU as well as John, but Stormy and Kevin like Pittsburgh plus 7.5. And we'll run down everybody's picks later on, but I wanted to get to that first game. And
I wanted to mention that uniform color, everybody that watches the show, go Google the Pitt home uniform color and Google the UCLA old school color, and you're going to get pretty close to the same uniform. That's why Tony likes them so much.
I got you. Okay. Yeah. I do.
You like the uniforms? No, I can't go there. Never mind.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to make an inappropriate joke, but that's probably not right.
Okay, yeah. Well, we try to drop the inappropriateness sort of down to the bottom here.
It wasn't that inappropriate, but I probably shouldn't make.
I know that in the early 2000s, there were some incidents when they did let Georgia and Florida finally play in some primetime football games there, and they made that rule where we can't have it later than 3:30 Eastern now. But maybe we could give the two fan bases one more opportunity at it and see if people could behave, because I think that contest, the rivalry, deserves the primetime atmosphere. And you do get the nighttime atmosphere for part of the second half, but it shouldn't be starting in the bright sunshine, in my opinion, of Florida. But I'd love to see this game completely under the lights again.
So you telling me that you would sign off on a nighttime game? I don't think they could do it. I don't think they could behave, man. I mean, have you watched the police blotter for the Georgia football team?
Well, remember I had a girlfriend for 2.5 years. It was the University of Florida cheerleader in the 90s. So I'm real familiar with the landing and real familiar with the whole setup there. I just think that we should give it a shot so we can play this game under the lights. I think we got to do that also when they had to play the home and home.
They did.
Yeah, redoing the deal. And there was, some back at the Gator Bowl back in the day, but I would just like to see the whole game with that nighttime atmosphere. And, because to be honest with you, there's been a few years, and this was not the way it was in the 90s and the 2000s when Spurrier was at Florida and he did so incredibly well. But here lately, if you could turn the game off midway through the second quarter and know what was going to happen if you were just a college football fan and you weren't a fan of one of the two fan bases, because Georgia has been so overwhelmed Florida early on in games. And it could very well happen again Saturday because the Bulldogs are favored by 17.
I know, man. It's you mentioned the devil himself, Steve Spurrier. I mean, he ruined for 25 years any possible good season that we could have had. It
Hey, you
seemed
beat
like
him in
that long.
'97, though. You beat it with
We
Robert.
had we had Bobo at the helm,
Uh-huh.
right? As much as
Yep.
I give Bobo a hard time, I had Bobo at the helm. 97 was a great year. Um, 2007 was a great year. Obviously, 1980, the Runs Lindsay run was the best year you could think about having.
Mm-hmm.
The home series, though, was this terrible.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
I mean, Spurrier comes back to Athens and lays 55 on us or something crazy.
It was ridiculous. Yeah, whatever. But
I mean, he beat it. It was just unbelievable how bad it was. And in the series, they got to re-up the contract in 2025, and I think they'll continue to do it down there. It's just too big of a tradition not to do. A lot of fans want to see it back at home. But I think probably because of the reason you're talking about, right? Because it would be a marquee nighttime game matchup if it was at home.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people like that. They like to, party all day and go to the night game and just go to the hotel and pass out or whatever. But I sort of prefer it in the afternoon, man. I like it. Starting early, get it over with, especially in the last few years.
From a Georgia standpoint, the '97 game is probably my favorite one with Robert Edwards. The huge run down. It seemed like it was 37-17 or something like that. But I was living in Athens at the time, and that kind of broke the game open. And Hap Hines, a good friend of mine, was kicking, and like you said, Mike Bobo playing quarterback. I thought that the officials really screwed them in '93.
93
timeout situation in the rains. Our quarterback and all thought that was one that was not fair to Georgia. Not wasn't on par the way it should have been. And then one as an admirer of UGA football that I wish that they could have had back was when Joe Tereshinki played quarterback for him. It was a real low scoring, real tight game, but because I got to know him a little bit at Athens Academy, he was such a great kid. I was pulling really hard for him and wanted a better result for him against the Gators.
Joe T3, man. Do you remember that game started? We drive down, run the ball, toss sweep, and somehow Joe T sneaks out to the corner of the end zone. They hit him. He catches and scores the opening. I was like, this is the year, man. It's going to work. And it did not work out that way for us. It used to be so bad, man. I mean, it used to be so bad that I just couldn't stand to hardly watch it. But the stat for this year is this will be the first senior class. They're trying to be the first senior class to go undefeated against the Gators.
Oh, really? So the year that Kyle Pitts, when he was playing, and the other Kyle was playing quarterback, would have been four years ago when they beat Georgia. Okay, well, that's good to know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the year that Rick had him take the personal foul call after the touchdown and the whole team went out on the field and all, the rest of the game really didn't go Georgia's way, did it?
Well, it didn't go penalty-wise, but we won the game. That was 2007. You had the Stars, and that was one of our wins, one of Rick's signature wins.
Oh, they did win that game. Okay, good.
They did. Good. But here's what it is. He paid the price for the rest of his career. For the next 3 years, it was nonstop, just flags on us. He made the refs so mad. Remember the big game, but 2 years after that, LSU comes to Athens, and A.J. Green goes up with the most miraculous catch ever to take the lead with hardly no time left. And he comes down and just barely threw his hands up like that. Nothing special. I mean, nothing compared to these celebrations you see now. I mean, they got full dance routines, but they throw the flag on him. Pin wagers, he pulls the flag. We get him 15 yards. And then, of course, Rick, for whatever reason, tries a squib kick. I have no idea. And LSU came back and beat us. And I attribute that loss back to the Florida game, just Rick sending the whole team out there. But I loved it, man. It was good. I loved it when he did it.
I love when we critique decisions and all. Everybody loves Kirby, but even Kirby's made some glorious mistakes. He was playing LSU at Baton Rouge one time. They tried, I think, a fake field goal or something early on there. And when they didn't get it, it set the complete tone for the game. And then there was that SEC championship game against Alabama, and every single one of us that were there saw Fields right there. I mean, we all saw it. So if we're seeing it, you know that Alabama is seeing it. And I was like, what are you doing?
Like he sent the regular punt team out, and here comes the number one recruit of all time as the up back. I mean, we didn't think he was snapping the ball to that guy, you know? But, I can see Kirby over there thinking, man, this is going to work. You know, he's just got it in his mind. This is going to work. He's got some crazy, stubborn problems like that. I mean, he wins, man. But
no matter what team you pull for, you're going to see a certain degree of malfeasance because here I am, diehard Yankees fan, and it felt like watching Game 1 of the World Series. Boone was managing for the Dodgers. Oh, I'm going to take out your ace after 83 pitches or 80 whatever pitches, and he's just dominating LA. So we can start using all of our high leverage guys. So we're basically out of our high leverage guys after 9 innings. If it goes to extra innings like it does, and Freddie Freeman hits a grand slam, and as we film this, he's hit a home run in every single game of the World Series because it's been 4 games before. And that was the game that the Yankees deserved to win. So instead of losing sleep that night, and I haven't slept since, the series could be tied at 2 right now instead of facing 3 games to 1. So it doesn't matter who you pull for. There's always stuff where you scratch your head and go like, what are they doing? What are they thinking about here?
I tell you, that was a moonshot though by Freddie Freeman, man. But I do agree with you. You got to second guess them. I mean, we're not coaches by any means, but you sit and second guess that jump, and it'll drive you crazy. I mean, I do it every game. I'm terrible, man. I'm a terrible Bobo guy. I'm sorry. I do. I go through the whole game, and that's all I talk about. I need a shirt that says, I blame Bobo, I guess, because but he'll pull it off eventually. I mean, he made some of the most fantastic calls against Texas. I mean, I give it to him, man. I mean, I know I bash him a lot.
The Monday after he was fired at Auburn, offensive coordinator, we were working out same time, not working out together. And I'm on the elliptical and he's on one of the treadmills, and he, desperately had looked for something that didn't have Auburn University on it because these coaches have to, wear the brand every day. Yeah. So he had like an Auburn High sweatshirt on where his son at the time was playing, football for his last year. And because I think that's so funny when it shows him like their hometown, it says like Auburn, Alabama. So like, well, the kid lived there a year. So, that is where he finished high school, I guess. But I wanted to go over there to Mike, man, and just say, it's coming to the head coach, because when they start firing coordinators, that's the last stand before it gets to them. And that's exactly what happened.
It's like anywhere in the corporate world, same type deal, right? You see the supervisor wind up on some performance plan or get fired. The manager's not far behind, I mean, it's just the same thing. And it's that way in football. But I tell you, that Bobo, he's hard-headed or something. I don't know what it is, but he seems to be having it.
I do like him. I think he's a good guy. I think he's grown up a lot since his college days. You could find him at Allen's Burgers. Remember Allen's Burgers in Athens and all?
Oh, of course.
So it's a landmark spot. Him and Brandon Tolbert and some others like to go out there. There may have been an incident or two back in the day, but I think Bobo is a really, really good guy. And I know that it's so hard. The play caller, that is not an easy position with the fan base.
No, anytime something goes wrong, you blame Bobo. You don't want to go and say player execution, but that really is what it comes down to a lot of times, because these games do turn on a dime. You've seen it, whether it's coordinator or turnover, whatever, some defensive guy makes a great stop. It will turn momentum, and it's really easy to say, oh, it's Bobo, And Georgia's fan base, we're a bunch of rude folks anyway. I mean, we're going to jump the gun. You know how we are. I mean, we're proud.
I didn't miss the Auburn-Georgia game from like 83 to 2017. I can tell you, I'm not going back to Athens for a game.
I don't want to keep bringing up people on Facebook, but like Chris Wilkie, he'll watch the warm-ups, and then he'll say, look at this crap Bobo is doing in warm-ups. I mean, he doesn't even wait until the game starts, I
mean, everybody knows me, knows I'm on the conservative side of the aisle. And thank goodness we're on the same side of the aisle. But, of course, he has some theories, does he not? And
I can't.
Your daughter and his daughter, they used to go to church together. I think they came to Auburn for church back in the day.
They used to go to that big church in Auburn. Yeah.
Highlands. Chris is an interesting guy. I don't know of anybody who's been in Facebook jail more than he has. In fact, he may have the record.
Yeah. I wouldn't touch a like button on him to save my life. Not,
All right. So since
anyway.
when we talked about the Georgia Florida game, let's get you to pick that. Bulldogs favored by 17.
Man, I'm just going to say unleash the dogs, man. I'm going Georgia minus 17.
Let the big dog eat. I felt like their game against Texas is the best complete game that I've seen anyone play. I mentioned that I thought like the second half against Clemson was probably the best second half, but best overall game that I'd seen at that time. But that was surpassed by the effort at Texas. I mean, they really gave that Texas offensive line fits, and I don't know how Florida fares better than that. Maybe, but I just can't find it when I look at it.
Look, I think they've sort of gotten their legs under them. I mean, they played much better against Kentucky than what the perception looked like we did. I mean, my theory on our game versus Kentucky. I think Bobo goes into that game trying to play. I mean, not Bobo, but I think led by Kirby. They both go into it wanting a low-scoring affair and to try to pound it out, but. They definitely look better against Kentucky.
Lost to Kentucky, then I could have blamed it on Bobo.
That's what you should have done. Yeah, I mean, you still can blame it on Bobo. But it's I want to get worried about it, as an old school. I mean, think about it again. I'm going to give you one more time. I know I keep bringing it up, but it is Georgia Florida week. I do this to exercise demons. From November 11th, 1989 to November 1st, 2003. We won the one game you brought up, the 1997 highlight, and that's it. So it's hard to get, I was used to worry to death about this game, and now the last 6 years I haven't, and I'm not going to worry about it, or 5 years, and I'm not going to worry about it now. So I say you turn the defense loose like they did against Texas. It's over.
Well, Spurrier's not coming back either. So
he is not coming back. That's right.
So, all right. So you like the Bulldogs. Let's begin or go back to where we originally were going to begin. Ohio State and Penn State. Ohio State favored by 4. Penn State fans know what you're talking about being dominated in a series. Ohio State has completely dominated them. When Penn State does win on occasion, I mean, like they've never won a football game and they storm the field, even though they've got one of the greatest traditions in the history of college football. Ohio State is not playing well right now. They've got big problems on the offensive line. They've lost their best offensive lineman for the season, and they've lost his backup as well. They'll be to the third tackle there on that side, on the left side. But they already were questionable with the offensive line. Skilled people are probably as good or better than anybody in the country. I really want the country's college football fans to understand the talent that is Jeremiah Smith, the freshman wide receiver, because the SEC people, they see Ryan Williams and think he's something, and he is. But Jeremiah, I'll take Smith over all of them. They have to go to Penn State, and it's never easy to win there, but Ohio State does very, very well. This could be a different story, though. This Penn State team is in position to play for the Big Ten championship themselves, and they're 4-point underdogs at home. A lot of people like them because Ohio State's not in good form. A lot of people like Penn State to win the game outright.
Yeah, I got a lot of weird feelings about this game. One, I hope you're right. I know that's your team. I don't think you're going to make this pick, but maybe you are. But this is a big game, and the big it always is. And my question is, is can Ohio State win the game in the air? Can Will Howard do what he needs to do with this talented receiving core he has, albeit they're young, but can he do it? Because I don't think he'll be able to run on them. And I don't know your feelings about it. I don't think you'll be able to run on Penn State any more so than you did last week. But you're going to need 1 or 2 big runs like you got last week.
That was pitiful last week. That was just pitiful.
What you have one run of like 53 yards, and then that's it. And if you don't do that, then it's going to have to be. And I've seen it a million times with old Rick teams, like we talked about it. You can have all the talent in the world. If you can't get the ball to them and out there in space, let them make the plays, it's going to be a long day. And just from a record, I'm going to pick Penn State plus the 4, man, because I hope you're right, though. I can't stand James Franklin, but I'm going to make the pick Penn State plus 4.
Okay. I have no pick on that game. First pick I'll be making will be the Oregon-Michigan game. The next game on the line is Indiana and Michigan State. Now, is it just me or the Indiana Hoosiers come like your second favorite team? They're favored by 6.5 at Michigan. What's your boy's name, Steve, or something like that? You got a friend that's
Brian, I'll throw a Wolfslag shout out. Brian Wolfslag. He's Indiana guy. Brings me back to the Indiana beer, you know.
He must be very pleased with his Hoosiers right now.
Oh, he is. I tell you though, he's a nervous wreck. I think because I texted him, you know, great win again. You know, this past week I thought it was a great win over Washington. And I texted him and said, "Hey, great win, buddy. Hope y'all keep it going." And I hadn't heard from him all week. I mean, he literally hadn't asked me about work. You know, he's the manager with me here at our company, and he hasn't even asked me a work question. He just doesn't even want to talk about it. But I feel good about it. I would feel good about it if I was him. Quarterback looks fantastic. I mean, he's throwing nothing but interceptions. He's got what is his name? Rourke. He's got 3 picks on the year. They got a balanced offense, scoring 40 points a game. I don't see it any different. I mean, I think they put up big time points on Michigan State, and it's Indiana by 6.5 easy.
All right. Danny goes with Indiana minus 6.5. So far he has Penn State +4, Indiana minus 6.5, Georgia minus 17, and we've already had him pick SMU minus 7.5. Next game on the docket is Iowa State, talking about another classic Big 12 championship game against Texas Tech. Iowa State favored by 14.
I think we're getting to the point of the season where you got all these undefeated teams. You know, and some of these are some not expected undefeated teams, Iowa State being one of those, but they've always got a pretty decent looking team. But they're looking really good this year. I'm taking them. I'm taking them minus 14. I think Iowa State minus 14. They've been playing great against the spread too. I mean, I think they're 5-2 against the spread already. So
they came back in that game at Iowa City against Iowa. And when they were able to pull that off, it just seems like they rode that tidal wave of momentum, and they haven't slowed down since. I'm making my first selection, and I'm opposite of everybody in this game, Oregon and Michigan. Oregon is favored by 16 at Michigan. I think Michigan is still solid. I just don't think they have the depth that some of the other teams do. But they still have the great Colson Loveland, the great tight end. They still have Graham on the defensive line. Will Johnson is probably not going to play. You're talking about a top 5 NFL draft choice. He's hurt. He wants to play. I doubt he plays. And the quarterback situation there, Tuttle had given them a lift, but now he's retiring from football with numerous injuries. So they're back to where they were at the start of the season when they were having serious problems. The quarterback, serious problems throwing the football. They have to kind of, they need to get the Donovan Edwards and all the running game going. I think that they're good enough to play within 2 touchdowns at home against Oregon. With Oregon, I'm just going to cite the travel again. With Oregon traveling not all the way across the country, but traveling still pretty far to a place they haven't played for. And I think this is like Michigan's last stand. They're not going to the college football playoff, and they're not leaving Columbus, Ohio with a victory this year. So if they want a victory over a marquee team, they've lost to Texas at home. They've lost to other, big games. I think this is their last chance at that big game win, because they're not going to beat Ohio State this year. In fact, we're going to beat them so bad for not coming the COVID year when Harbaugh said they were too sick to make the trip 4 years ago. We're going to beat them like we were going to beat them that day, except only worse. So I'm going to go with I hate saying it, but go Big Blue in the 16 points.
All right. So you like them to keep it close, but not win the game, obviously, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. I like that. And I will say this, the traveling part of it is the one thing that might make me nervous. And this year when they had the new conferences, I thought that the traveling would have more of an impact. I've got to look up that stat. I haven't, but in my mind, I feel like it hasn't been that big of a deal. I mean, the teams that were traveling, I would think, oh, this is going to be a tough, and it never turned out that way. So I don't see anything slowing down this Oregon offense. And I've said it a million times, Dan Lanning's got that defense dialed up. I don't know. I don't feel like Michigan can score more than 10 points on them. And I'm going Oregon minus 16. And that's my 5-star pick.
And that's your 5-star pick. Take about 15 seconds to break down Texas A&M favored by 3.5 at South Carolina.
All right, on that one, all I got to say is I'm going to roll the dice that South Carolina can put it together at home. They've lost a lot at home. They played fantastic on the road. It's weird. So I'm going to say that this is the time they get it together at home, and I'm going to take the Gamecocks plus 3.5.
Okay. We got to get to
the Aggies look great. The Aggies look fantastic last week. They look fantastic. That quarterback was amazing. But anyway, I'm going to roll the dice on South Carolina.
Let's get through these NFL games in a hurry. I will tell you real quick, I've got the Falcons minus 1.5 at home against the Cowboys, and I'm taking the Lions. We call it a good line here, Lions even at the Packers, and that rounds up my football plays. Let's get you to take the Cowboys-Falcons game with the Falcons favored by 1.5.
All right. Well, I did one time. I got on the Falcons and lost it, so I'm just going to go with the Cowboys plus 1.5. I don't possibly know how they could win after last year, but I mean last week. But I'm taking. I can't get on this Falcon train.
Now, you like the Cardinals -1 against the Bears in a battle of two teams that are in playoff contention right now.
I do. I'm going to stick with that one right there, and I feel like my pro picks have been the better ones, and at least they've kept me at least out of the bottom of the bottom, and I like that Cardinals pick.
You're with me with the Detroit Lions even, and then you've got the Kansas City Chiefs favored by 9. Talking about undefeated, another undefeated team.
Another team that's playing exceptionally well. I think Mahomes is just way too much for this Bucs team coming in. They're reeling a loss against the Falcons as well. I think they're not going to be able to keep up with the Chiefs. And I know 9's a big number, but I don't see a problem with it. I'm going Chiefs -9.
Okay, I'm going to quickly run down the panel's picks and then come back to you for a fast wrap up. I'm 24-20, 4-5 with the 5 stars, 8-3 with soccer. I'm going to go with Michigan +16 in the college, and then I've got 2 NFL picks. My 5-star will be the Atlanta Falcons -1.5 against my favorite NFL team, the Dallas Cowboys, who are having a slew of problems. And then I've got the Detroit Lions even. I'm going to give you 2 soccer picks. I'm 8-3 on the year in soccer. That's separate of the 24-20. I'm going with my team, Bayern Munich, favored by 1.5. They got to win by 2 or more against Union Berlin. So Bayern Munich -1.5. And I'll take Manchester United. This is an even line. Pick them. Absolutely even against Chelsea. So Bayern Munich -1.5 and Manchester United even. Kevin is 47-50 and 3-6 with the 5 stars. He's got Penn State +4. His 5 stars, the Indiana Hoosiers -6.5. He goes with the Georgia Bulldogs -17. Texas Tech +14. Oregon -16. He likes South Carolina +3.5, and Pittsburgh +7.5 rounds out the college selections. In the NFL, he goes with the Atlanta Falcons -1.5, the Cardinals -1, Detroit even, and the Kansas City Chiefs -9. Stormy's 49-48, 3-6 with the 5 stars. Ohio State -4, Indiana -6.5. He's got Georgia -17. Texas Tech +14, Oregon -16. His 5 stars, Texas A&M -3.5, and the Pittsburgh Panthers +7.5. In the NFL, Falcons -1.5, Cardinals -1, Packers even, Tampa Bay +9 against the Chiefs. John is 49-48, tied with Stormy, but John is 2-7 with his 5 stars, but his 5 stars, the Buckeyes, -4, Ohio State. Indiana, he goes with -6.5. He likes Georgia -17, Iowa State -14. A lot of favorites here. Oregon -16 against Michigan. He's got South Carolina +3.5. He rounds up his college selections with SMU -7.5. He's on the Falcons -1.5 in the NFL. The Chicago Bears +1. Detroit Lions even, and the Kansas City Chiefs -9. Danny 44-53, 3-6 with the 5 stars. Penn State +4. Indiana -6.5. Georgia -17. Iowa State -14. His 5-star Oregon Ducks -16. He's got the South Carolina Gamecocks +3.5, and SMU, the Mustangs, -7.5. And in the NFL, you just heard him say Dallas Cowboys +1.5, Cardinals -1, Lions even, and the Kansas City Chiefs -9. I got 30 seconds for you, Danny. Wrap things up for us.
All right. Well, I think that, as I said, this season has turned out to be a fantastic football season if you're a college football fan. There's some great games, some unsurprising, some surprising games, some not so surprising, but I'm going to leave it with the outdoor cocktail party. And Larry Munson, 42 years calling Georgia, he's got to pull us through, and he'll be up there pulling for those dogs, and he'll probably fall through his steel metal chair again, as he said in 1980 when Lindsey Scott ran. Go Dogs.
All right. For Danny Arp, who is in Jacksonville, Florida, and for Jake Barton in Noonan, Georgia, I'm Tony Jones in Auburn, Alabama. We'll see you next time right here on Talking with Tony.
All right.